Shadows in the sunlight. Erica Brooks stood on the threshold of her new life, her journey woven with threads of triumph and struggle. At 32, she was more than just a human rights attorney. She was a force, a champion for justice in a system often skewed against those like her. She had earned her reputation not through privilege but persistence, navigating the hurdles of systemic bias as a black woman with unwavering resolve. The courtroom was her battleground, her words weapons of advocacy that pierced through layers of oppression. But for Erica, the battle was never just about winning. It was about leaving the world better than she found it. The day Erica discovered she was pregnant, she felt as if she were cradling a miracle. She and her husband, Darren, a cybersecurity analyst with a quiet strength, had spent endless nights dreaming about their child, a life untainted by the shadows of discrimination. They imagined laughter echoing through their home, bedtime stories filled with tales of bravery, and a world where their baby could dream without limits. As her pregnancy progressed, Erica found solace in the gentle rhythms of life. She treasured the small moments, Darren's hand resting protectively on her growing belly, the first fluttering kicks of her baby, and the aroma of home-cooked meals that symbolized their nurturing bond. The external world, however, was not as kind. Erica had grown accustomed to the sharp edges of systemic racism. It was not just the dismissive comments or cold stares, but the ever-present weight of being judged by the color of her skin. Yet she met each challenge with defiance, turning pain into fuel for her cause. That Saturday morning felt like any other. The air was crisp and sunlight spilled over the suburban streets as Erica headed to the local grocery store. Darren had offered to go in her place, but she insisted. These quiet errands allowed her a slice of normalcy amidst the whirlwind of her career and pregnancy. Her playlist hummed softly in the car, a mix of soothing melodies that mirrored her calm anticipation. She parked her car, taking a moment to admire the blooming flowers lining the lot. It was a day full of promise. She gently patted her belly and whispered, "Just us today, little one." With a smile, she grabbed her reusable bags and headed inside, the rhythmic hum of the automatic doors ushering her into the bright store. Inside, Erica moved through the aisles with practiced ease, selecting vibrant produce and pantry staples. She paused in the bakery section, savoring the aroma of freshly baked bread, and added a loaf to her cart. The simple act of grocery shopping felt almost meditative, a reminder of the life she was building. As she approached the checkout, her serene moment was interrupted. Two police officers entered the store, their presence commanding attention. Erica glanced at them briefly, her instincts pricking with unease. They were talking to each other, their gazes scanning the room. She dismissed the feeling and focused on unloading her items. Almond milk, fresh greens, yogurt, she murmured, organizing her purchases with care. The cashier, a middle-aged woman with a warm smile, commented on the baby items in Erica's cart. "Looks like someone's preparing for a little one." Erica smiled and nodded, feeling the familiar flutter of her baby's movement. "Just a few more months," she replied. But the moment of connection shattered as voices boomed from the store entrance. The officers had locked eyes on her, their conversation abruptly ceasing. One of them, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a stern expression, began walking toward her. The air around Erica thickened, and the vibrant energy of the store faded into a hushed murmur. "You there?" the officer barked, his voice sharp and authoritative. Erica froze, her hand tightening around the handle of her cart. "Me?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with disbelief. "Yes, you. What are you doing here?" he demanded, his tone dripping with accusation. Erica's chest tightened. She was just a woman shopping for groceries. What had she done to warrant such scrutiny? "I'm just shopping," she replied, her voice firm despite the growing knot in her stomach. "Is there a problem, officer?" "You fit a description," he said, his words heavy with implication. His partner, a wiry man with sharp eyes, stepped closer, his hand resting on his holster. Erica's heart raced. She had faced prejudice before, but this felt different, More visceral, more dangerous. A description of what? She asked, her lawyer's instincts kicking in. Her tone was measured, calculated, but her mind was spiraling. "We don't owe you an explanation," the taller officer snapped. "Step aside and let us do our job." The store's ambience had shifted entirely. Customers watched in stunned silence, their curiosity mingled with unease. Erica stood her ground, her body rigid with defiance. "I've done nothing wrong," she said, her voice unwavering. The taller officer's patience snapped. He grabbed her arm with a force that made her wince. "Don't resist," he barked, as if preemptively excusing his aggression. "Let go of me." Erica shouted, her voice cutting through the store's silence. "I'm pregnant. You're hurting me." Her words hung in the air, a desperate plea that seemed to momentarily halt the officer's actions. But it was fleeting. The second officer joined in, his grip on her other arm like iron. Erica's protests grew louder, her voice trembling with both anger and fear. "You're making a mistake," she yelled, her mind racing with the implications of this encounter. And then, a sharp, searing pain shot through her abdomen. She gasped, clutching her stomach as her knees buckled. "Please," she whispered, her strength fading. "I'm pregnant. Stop this." The world blurred around her. Voices shouted, customers demanded explanations, but Erica's focus narrowed to the excruciating pain coursing through her body. The officer's hands didn't relent, their cold grip a cruel reminder of the injustice she was enduring. As darkness encroached, Erica's thoughts turned to her child, the life she was fighting for. "Hold on, little one," she whispered internally, her spirit desperate to protect her unborn baby. But the pain was relentless, pulling her into an abyss she couldn't escape. The last thing she heard before succumbing to the void was Darren's voice in her mind, a memory of him saying, "You're the strongest person I know, Erica. You fight for everyone. Never stop." Erica's world faded to black, leaving behind the haunting echoes of chaos, anger, and heartbreak. Into the abyss, Erica's consciousness drifted in a haze, her mind a chaotic storm of fragmented images and muffled sounds. She wasn't entirely awake, nor was she lost in the depths of unconsciousness. Instead, she lingered in a liminal space where pain, fear, and confusion waged war against her fading strength. Somewhere in the recesses of her mind, she held on to a single fragile thought: her baby. The life within her had been her beacon, her motivation. And now, as the shadows threatened to engulf her, that life was slipping through her fingers. The sterile hum of fluorescent lights buzzed faintly as Erica opened her eyes, the glaring brightness forcing her to squint. The scent of antiseptic hit her nose, sharp and unpleasant. Her body felt heavy, each movement sluggish, as though she were wading through water. Panic surged through her as she attempted to sit up, her hands instinctively reaching for her stomach. A nurse appeared at her side, her gentle hands pressing Erica back against the hospital bed. "Take it easy, Ms. Brooks," the nurse said softly, her voice calm but laced with an undertone of sorrow. Erica's mind raced as memories from the grocery store flooded back in vivid, agonizing detail. The officer's cold grips, the excruciating pain, the terrified faces of onlookers. Her heart pounded as her hands moved to her abdomen once more, desperate for some sign, some assurance that her child was safe. The silence that followed was deafening. Where's my baby?" Erica whispered, her voice trembling. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an answer she wasn't sure she wanted to hear. The nurse's expression shifted, her practiced calm giving way to visible heartbreak. She hesitated, her lips parting as though to speak, but no words came. Instead, she reached for Erica's hand, her touch warm but firm. Before the nurse could answer, the door to the room creaked open, and Darren entered, his face a mask of exhaustion and anguish. His usually steady demeanor was shattered, his eyes red-rimmed and filled with a pain Erica had never seen before. He crossed the room in a few hurried strides, his presence a mixture of comfort and torment. He took Erica's hand in his, squeezing it as though grounding himself in her touch. "Darren," Erica croaked, her throat dry and voice barely audible. "Tell me, where is our baby?" Darren's breath hitched, and his gaze dropped to the floor. He seemed to struggle, his jaw tightening as he fought to keep his composure. Finally, he looked up, his eyes brimming with tears. "Erica," he began, his voice breaking, "I'm so sorry." Her heart shattered in an instant, the weight of his words crushing her. She shook her head violently, refusing to accept the truth. "No," she whispered, her voice growing louder with each repetition. "No, no, no. This can't be happening." Darren wrapped his arms around her, his embrace both protective and fragile. Erica sobbed against his chest, her cries raw and unrestrained. The pain in her abdomen was nothing compared to the searing agony in her heart. Her baby, the life she had nurtured, dreamed of, and fought for, was gone. The next few days passed in a blur of grief, anger, and numbness. Erica remained in the hospital under observation, her body recovering from the physical trauma even as her mind wrestled with the emotional devastation. Darren stayed by her side, his unwavering support the only constant in her crumbling world. Yet even his presence couldn't quell the storm raging within her. When Erica finally found the strength to speak about what had happened, her words were filled with both sorrow and fury. "They killed our baby, Darren," she said, her voice a mix of resolve and despair. "They took everything from us." Darren nodded, his expression somber. "And they need to be held accountable," he replied. "We can't let this go unanswered." Erica knew he was right. As much as her grief threatened to consume her, she also felt a growing fire within, a burning need for justice, not just for her child, but for every victim of systemic brutality. She had spent her career fighting for others, and now the fight had become deeply personal. Once she was discharged from the hospital, Erica and Darren returned home, their once cozy sanctuary now a painful reminder of what they had lost. The nursery, still under construction, stood as a ghostly tribute to their shattered dreams. Erica closed the door to the room, unable to face it yet. Instead, she turned her attention to what she could control, her fight for justice. She contacted her legal team, a group of dedicated professionals who had stood by her side through countless human rights cases. They listened intently as Erica recounted every detail of the incident, their expressions a mix of outrage and determination. "We'll need to build a strong case," David, her lead attorney, said. "The officers involved must be held accountable, and we'll need to shine a spotlight on the systemic issues that allowed this to happen." Erica nodded, her resolve hardening. "I want this to be more than just a lawsuit," she said. "I want this to ignite change. People need to see what's happening, to understand the weight of this injustice." As the legal team began their work, Erica delved into her own research. She pored over case files, statistics, and reports on police brutality and racial bias, each new discovery fueling her determination. She reached out to community leaders, activists, and organizations dedicated to civil rights, forging alliances and building a network of support. Her story began to gain attention. Local media picked up on the incident, and soon, Erica found herself at the center of a growing movement. Invitations to speak at rallies and forums poured in, and while she was still navigating her grief, Erica knew she couldn't remain silent. Her voice was a powerful tool, and she intended to use it. At her first public appearance, Erica stood before a crowd of supporters, her heart pounding as she prepared to speak. Darren stood beside her, his hand resting on her back, a silent reminder of his unwavering belief in her strength. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, her voice steady despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "My name is Erica Brooks," she began, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. "I am a human rights attorney, a wife, and a mother. And I am here today because my child's life was stolen from me by the very system that is supposed to protect us." The crowd fell silent, her words hanging heavy in the air. Erica continued, her voice growing stronger with each sentence. "What happened to me is not an isolated incident. It is a symptom of a broken system, a system that values some lives over others, that turns a blind eye to injustice, and that allows those in power to act without accountability. As she spoke, Erica felt a sense of purpose reigniting within her. The pain of her loss was still there, a wound that would never fully heal, but it had transformed into something more. It had become a call to action, a rallying cry for change. "This fight is not just for my baby," Erica said, her voice unwavering. "It is for every life lost, every family torn apart, and every person who has been silenced by injustice. Together, we can demand better. Together, we can create a world where no one has to endure what I have endured." The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers a chorus of solidarity. Erica stepped back, her hand finding Darren's as she took in the support surrounding her. She wasn't alone in this fight, and for the first time since that fateful day, she felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead was long, and the challenges daunting, but Erica was ready. She had spent her life fighting for others, and now she would fight for her child, for herself, and for a better future. Confronting the machine. The courtroom was a place Erica Brooks knew well, but this time, it wasn't as an advocate for others. It was her story, her grief, and her loss laid bare for all to see. The air buzzed with tension as reporters jotted down notes. Activists whispered strategies, and spectators filled every available seat, eager to witness the clash of justice against systemic oppression. Erica sat in the front row, her husband Darren beside her, his presence a steadying anchor in the storm of emotions swirling within her. She wore a black suit, her expression composed, but her eyes betrayed the weight she carried. Her legal team, led by her trusted attorney David Moreau, was ready to challenge the system that had failed her so profoundly. As the judge entered the courtroom, everyone rose, the rustling of fabric the only sound. Erica glanced at the bench, taking in the stern yet attentive gaze of Judge Miriam Calloway. Known for her no-nonsense demeanor and sharp intellect, Calloway was someone Erica respected, though she knew the path to justice would still be fraught with challenges. The prosecution began by laying out the facts of the case, their tone measured but firm. "Your Honor, we are here today to address a grievous miscarriage of justice," David began, his voice resonating in the hushed room. "On the day in question, my client, Erica Brooks, was a pregnant woman shopping for groceries. She posed no threat, yet she was targeted, harassed, and ultimately assaulted by Officer Mark Lewis and his partner, Officer Daniel Crow." David gestured toward Erica, his expression resolute. This assault led to the tragic loss of her unborn child, a loss that cannot be quantified or undone. Today we seek accountability, not just for Ms. Brooks, but for every individual who has suffered under a system that allows such egregious acts to occur. As David continued to present evidence, Erica's mind wandered briefly to the moment she had decided to fight back. It hadn't been easy. She had questioned herself, her strength, and whether the pain of reliving the trauma was worth the possibility of change. But Darren's unwavering belief in her, combined with the stories of countless others who had reached out to her, had solidified her resolve. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for a future where no mother would have to endure what she had. The defense's arguments were as expected, an attempt to justify the officer's actions under the guise of routine procedure. Their attorney, a sharp-tongued woman named Ellen Price, painted a picture of confusion and urgency. The officers acted based on the information they had at the time, she argued. Their actions, while regrettable, were not malicious but a result of miscommunication. Erica clenched her fists under the table, her nails digging into her palms. Miscommunication. The word felt like a slap in the face, a dismissal of the life-altering trauma she had endured. She glanced at Darren, who gave her hand a reassuring squeeze, his steady gaze reminding her to stay composed. When it was time for Officer Lewis to testify, the atmosphere in the courtroom grew tense. Erica watched as he approached the witness stand, his uniform crisp, his demeanor stoic. He avoided her gaze, his eyes fixed on some indeterminate point in the distance. "Officer Lewis," David began, his tone calm but pointed. "Can you describe the events that led you to target Ms. Brooks on the day in question?" Lewis shifted in his seat, his expression guarded. "We received a report of suspicious activity in the area," he said. "Ms. Brooks matched the description we were given." David raised an eyebrow. "A pregnant woman, shopping for groceries, matched your description of suspicious activity." The officer hesitated, his posture stiffening. "The report was vague," he admitted. "We acted on the information we had." David pressed on. "And when Ms. Brooks informed you that she was pregnant, did you consider the potential harm your actions could cause?" Lewis's jaw tightened, his response clipped. "We were following protocol." David paused, letting the weight of the officer's words settle over the courtroom. "Protocol," he repeated, his tone laced with disbelief. "Is protocol an excuse for negligence, for the loss of an innocent life?" The officer remained silent, his expression unreadable. As the day wore on, Erica was called to the stand. The courtroom fell silent as she took her oath, her movements deliberate and composed. She sat down, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her gaze unwavering. "Ms. Brooks," David began, his voice gentle, "can you describe the impact this incident has had on your life?" Erica took a deep breath, steadying herself. "It's hard to put into words," she said, her voice steady despite the tears welling in her eyes. "That day changed everything. I lost my child, our child. I lost the dreams and hopes we had built for our future." Her voice trembled, but she pressed on. "It wasn't just about what they did to me physically. It was the message they sent, that I, as a black woman, am seen as a threat, even when I'm simply living my life. That my pain, my humanity, doesn't matter." David nodded, his expression somber. "And why did you decide to pursue this case?" Erica straightened, her resolve evident. "Because this isn't just about me. This is about a system that has failed too many for too long. I want justice for my child, but I also want change. Real, tangible change that ensures this never happens to anyone else." As Erica spoke, the courtroom seemed to hold its breath, her words resonating deeply. She wasn't just a victim. She was a warrior, standing tall in the face of unimaginable pain. The cross-examination was brutal. Ellen Price attempted to poke holes in Erica's testimony, questioning her recollection of events and suggesting that the officer's actions had been misinterpreted. But Erica held her ground, her responses measured and unwavering. "Ms. Brooks," Price said, her tone sharp, "isn't it possible that the officers were simply doing their jobs and that this was an unfortunate accident?" Erica's eyes narrowed. "An accident implies a lack of intent," she said firmly. "But their actions were deliberate. They chose to target me. They chose to ignore my pleas. And those choices had devastating consequences." When Erica stepped down from the stand, the courtroom erupted into murmurs of support. Darren met her at the defense table, his arms wrapping around her in a protective embrace. "You were incredible," he whispered. "I'm so proud of you." The trial continued for several days, each moment a grueling battle of narratives. Erica's legal team presented compelling evidence, including security footage from the grocery store that contradicted the officer's claims. Witness testimonies from bystanders painted a damning picture of the officer's behavior, their accounts echoing Erica's own. By the time closing arguments began, the tension in the courtroom was palpable. David stood before the jury, his words a passionate plea for justice. "This case is about more than one woman's loss," he said. "It's about the systemic failure that allowed this to happen. It's about demanding accountability and ensuring that no one else suffers the same fate." As the jury deliberated, Erica and Darren waited in a small room nearby, their hands intertwined. The outcome was uncertain, but Erica knew one thing for sure. She had given everything she had to this fight. When the verdict was finally announced, the courtroom fell silent. Erica held her breath as the foreperson stood, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This was it, the culmination of her journey, the confrontation of a machine that had taken so much from her. And no matter the outcome, Erica knew she had done what mattered most. She had fought back. The verdict and the awakening. The air was thick with anticipation as the foreperson of the jury stood, the weight of their decision etched into their every movement. Erica sat rigid, her hands clasped tightly together. Darren was beside her, his presence a steadying force as she prepared to face the culmination of her battle. The courtroom was silent, the usual murmur of spectators replaced by a collective breath held in suspense. Erica's heart pounded in her chest, the sound echoing in her ears. It wasn't just her case being decided. It was a chance to strike at the very heart of a broken system. The foreperson unfolded the paper in their hands, their gaze sweeping across the room before focusing on the judge. In the matter of Erica Brooks versus Officer Mark Lewis and Officer Daniel Crow, on the charge of wrongful conduct resulting in harm and negligence. They paused, the room brimming with tension. "We find the defendants guilty." The words hit Erica like a tidal wave, a surge of relief and vindication crashing over her. She exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding, her vision blurring as tears welled in her eyes. Darren squeezed her hand, his own emotions barely contained as he whispered, "You did it. We did it." The judge's gavel struck, signaling order in the courtroom, but the energy was electric. Activists and supporters erupted into murmurs of celebration, and reporters furiously scribbled notes. Erica's legal team turned to her, their faces alight with triumph. David leaned in, his voice filled with pride. "This is a victory, Erica. For you, and for everyone who needed to see this moment." But Erica wasn't ready to celebrate yet. As much as the verdict brought a sense of closure, she knew this was just one battle in a much larger war. The officer's sentencing hearing was yet to come, and the broader systemic issues that allowed such incidents to occur still loomed large. After the verdict was announced, Erica addressed the press gathered outside the courthouse. She stood at the podium, flanked by her legal team and community leaders, her voice strong despite the weight of the moment. "This verdict is a step toward accountability," she began, her words resonating with the gathered crowd. "But let me be clear, this is not the end. This fight is far from over. Today, we've shown that justice can be served, but true justice means ensuring that no one else endures what I've endured." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the sea of faces, many of them reflecting her own pain and determination. "My child's life was taken from me, but their memory will fuel my mission. We must demand better from our institutions, from our leaders, and from ourselves. Together, we can create a system where justice isn't just an ideal but a reality." The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers a mixture of solidarity and hope. Erica stepped away from the podium, her body trembling with the emotional toll of the day. Darren was at her side in an instant, his arm wrapping around her shoulders as they made their way through the throng of supporters. In the days that followed, Erica threw herself into the work of reform. The verdict had given her a platform, and she intended to use it. She worked tirelessly with civil rights organizations, lobbying for changes to law enforcement policies and accountability measures. She spoke at rallies, her voice a beacon for those who had suffered in silence. But as much as Erica poured herself into the fight, the weight of her loss remained ever present. There were moments when the grief threatened to overwhelm her, when she stood in the doorway of the unfinished nursery, or when she saw a mother cradling her child at a community event. Those moments reminded her of what had been taken and why she couldn't stop. One evening, as Erica sat in her home office surrounded by stacks of legal briefs and campaign materials, Darren entered the room carrying 2 mugs of tea. He placed one in front of her, his expression thoughtful as he took the seat across from her. "You've been working nonstop," he said gently. "You're doing incredible things, but when was the last time you took a moment for yourself?" Erica sighed, leaning back in her chair. "I can't stop now, Darren. There's so much to do." He reached for her hand, his touch grounding. "I know, and I'm proud of you. But you're only human, Erica. You can't pour from an empty cup." His words lingered with her, a reminder that even warriors needed rest. She nodded slowly, her resolve softening. "You're right," she admitted. "I'll try to find some balance." The next day, Erica took a rare moment for herself, visiting the local park she had often frequented during her pregnancy. The sight of children playing, their laughter ringing out across the open fields, brought a bittersweet ache to her heart. She sat on a bench beneath a sprawling oak tree, her thoughts drifting. As she watched a young boy chase after a kite, his carefree joy reminding her of the life she had envisioned for her own child, Erica felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her fight wasn't just about punishment. It was about creating a future where children like him could grow up unburdened by fear and discrimination. The sentencing hearing for the officers brought another wave of emotions. Officer Lewis and Officer Crow faced significant penalties, their actions condemned by the court as a gross violation of public trust. But as Erica listened to the judge's ruling, she couldn't help but reflect on the broader implications. After the hearing, Erica addressed the press once more, her tone measured yet resolute. "Justice is not just about punishing individuals," she said. "It's about addressing the system that allows these injustices to happen. It's about preventing the next tragedy before it occurs." Her words resonated far beyond the courthouse steps, inspiring a wave of advocacy and reform efforts. Erica became a central figure in the movement, her story a rallying cry for change. As the months turned into a year, Erica's work began to bear fruit. New policies were implemented, community outreach programs expanded, and a cultural shift toward accountability and transparency in law enforcement slowly took root. Though the pain of her loss remained, Erica found solace in knowing that her fight had made a difference. One evening, as Erica and Darren sat on their porch watching the sunset, she rested her head on his shoulder, a rare moment of peace enveloping them. "Do you think we're making a difference?" she asked softly. Darren kissed the top of her head, his voice filled with quiet conviction. "You already have. And you're not done yet." Erica smiled faintly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The fight was far from over, but she knew she wasn't alone. Together, they would continue to confront the machine, one step at a time, until justice was not just a dream, but a reality for everyone. The ripple effect. A year had passed since Erica Brooks had stepped into the courtroom to demand justice, and in that time, her life had transformed in ways she could never have imagined. The verdict against Officers Lewis and Crow had been a monumental step toward accountability, but Erica's battle was far from over. She had become the face of a movement, her story a symbol of resilience and the urgent need for systemic reform. The world around her buzzed with change. Erica's name appeared in headlines, her speeches at rallies and conferences broadcast far and wide. She had been invited to meet with lawmakers, her insights helping to shape new legislation aimed at improving police accountability and community relations. The reforms, though incremental, were a step in the right direction, and Erica poured herself into the work with the same fierce dedication that had defined her career. But the price of her newfound platform was steep. The constant demands on her time left little room for personal reflection or healing. Darren often reminded her to take breaks, to nurture herself as much as she nurtured the movement, but Erica struggled to let go of the guilt that fueled her drive. The loss of her child remained an ache she carried with her daily, a reminder of why she had chosen this path. One afternoon, Erica sat in her home office, reviewing proposals for a national campaign to address racial bias in law enforcement. Stacks of documents cluttered her desk, and her laptop buzzed with incoming emails. She was immersed in her work when her phone rang, the caller ID displaying a number she didn't recognize. "Hello, this is Erica Brooks," she answered, her tone professional but weary. "Ms. Brooks, my name is Camille Harris," the voice on the other end said, trembling slightly. I hope I'm not disturbing you, but I wanted to thank you. Your story saved my son's life." Erica's grip on the phone tightened, her focus shifting entirely. "Please, go on," she said, her voice softening. Camille explained how her teenage son, Jaden, had been wrongfully detained by police in their small town. When she learned of Erica's case, she had been inspired to fight back, contacting local activists and reaching out to civil rights organizations for support. The community rallied around her, and with the pressure mounting, the charges against Jaden were dropped. The experience had opened Camille's eyes to the power of collective action, and she credited Erica with giving her the courage to stand up for her son. "I just wanted you to know that what you're doing, it matters," Camille said, her voice breaking. "You're giving people like me hope." Erica was silent for a moment, the weight of Camille's words settling over her. "Thank you for sharing this with me," she said finally, her throat tight with emotion. "It means more than I can say." After the call ended, Erica sat quietly, her thoughts racing. Stories like Camille's were becoming more common, evidence of the ripple effect her fight had set in motion. But as much as these stories gave her hope, they also reminded her of the immense responsibility she carried. Later that evening, Darren found her sitting on the porch, staring out at the horizon. He joined her, handing her a mug of tea and wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Long day?" he asked gently. Erica nodded, her gaze distant. "I got a call from a woman today," she said. "She told me my story inspired her to fight for her son. It made me realize just how far this has reached and how much work we still have to do." Darren gave her shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "You're doing incredible things, Erica, but you don't have to carry this weight alone. Let people help you." His words lingered with her, a reminder that the movement was bigger than any one person. Erica began to delegate more of her workload, trusting her growing network of advocates and allies to carry the torch alongside her. This allowed her to focus on the initiatives she was most passionate about, including a mentorship program for young activists and a scholarship fund for aspiring civil rights lawyers. One of the most impactful moments of Erica's journey came during a town hall meeting in a predominantly black neighborhood that had been disproportionately affected by police violence. The room was packed with residents, community leaders, and law enforcement officials, the air thick with tension as they prepared to discuss the proposed reforms. Erica took the stage, her presence commanding yet approachable. She began by sharing her story, her voice steady but filled with emotion. She spoke of her son, of the day that had changed her life, and of her determination to create a better future. "This isn't about assigning blame," she said, her gaze sweeping over the audience. "It's about accountability. It's about understanding that trust between law enforcement and the communities they serve must be built on respect and mutual understanding. We can't move forward without addressing the pain of the past." Her words resonated deeply, sparking a candid and at times heated dialogue between the residents and the police officers in attendance. For hours, they discussed their fears, frustrations, and hopes, finding common ground in their shared desire for safety and justice. By the end of the meeting, the atmosphere had shifted, a tentative but genuine sense of solidarity beginning to take root. As Erica left the town hall that evening, a young girl approached her, clutching a notebook. "Ms. Brooks, can I ask you something?" the girl asked shyly. Erica knelt to the girl's level, her smile warm. "Of course." The girl hesitated, then held out her notebook. "I wrote this for you," she said. "It's a poem about being brave." Erica took the notebook, her heart swelling as she read the girl's heartfelt words. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "This means the world to me." The girl beamed, and Erica felt a renewed sense of purpose. It wasn't just about the policies or the court cases. It was about inspiring the next generation to believe in their own power to create change. As Erica and Darren drove home that night, she gazed out the window, her mind buzzing with possibilities. The road ahead was still long, and the challenges daunting, but she was more determined than ever to keep fighting. For her son, for the countless lives touched by injustice, and for the future that she and Darren had once dreamed of building together. "We're going to change the world," she said softly, more to herself than to Darren. He glanced at her, his expression filled with quiet pride. "You already are, Erica." The night sky stretched out before them, vast and unyielding, a reminder that even the darkest moments could be illuminated by a single, unwavering light. And Erica Brooks was determined to be that light, the dawn of change. The early morning sun poured through Erica Brooks' window, its rays casting long, golden streaks across her desk. Papers and folders were strewn across its surface, evidence of the relentless work she had poured herself into over the past year. Today was no ordinary day. It was the day of her keynote address at the National Summit on Justice Reform, an event that would bring together activists, lawmakers, community leaders, and law enforcement from across the country. Erica was the featured speaker, her story now a rallying cry for change and progress. As she dressed, Erica took a moment to reflect. The journey to this moment had been long and harrowing, marked by heartbreak and resilience. She touched the small locket she wore around her neck, a gift from Darren on what would have been their son's first birthday. Inside was a tiny photo of an ultrasound, the only image they had of the life they had lost. It was a reminder of why she fought so fiercely, and a symbol of the hope she carried for a better future. Darren appeared in the doorway, holding a steaming cup of coffee. "You ready for today?" he asked, his smile steady and reassuring. Erica nodded, taking the cup from him and savoring the warmth. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied. "This is the biggest platform I've ever had. I just hope my words can make an impact." "They will," Darren said firmly. "You've already changed so much, Erica. People are listening because of you. They believe because of you." His words bolstered her confidence, and as they left their home and drove to the event, Erica felt a mixture of nerves and excitement. The summit was being held in a grand convention center, its halls bustling with activity, as attendees mingled and exchanged ideas. Erica was ushered backstage, where her team waited with last-minute updates and encouragement. The main auditorium was packed with thousands of attendees, the energy in the room electric as the summit began. Speakers took the stage, sharing insights and strategies for tackling systemic injustice. Each speech built upon the momentum of the last, culminating in the introduction of Erica Brooks. When her name was announced, the crowd erupted into applause, a standing ovation that brought tears to her eyes. As she stepped onto the stage, the weight of the moment hit her. This wasn't just about her story. It was about every life touched by injustice, every voice silenced by oppression, and every dream cut short by systemic failures. She began her speech with a moment of silence for her son, a tribute to the life that had ignited her fight. Then she spoke, her voice clear and steady, weaving her personal story with a broader call to action. "When I stood in a courtroom over a year ago, seeking justice for my child, I wasn't just fighting for myself," she said. "I was fighting for every mother who has been robbed of their joy, for every family shattered by a system that values power over humanity. That fight didn't end with a verdict. It continues every day, in every community, in every conversation we have about accountability, equity, and justice." Erica outlined the steps needed for meaningful reform: community-based policing, mandatory de-escalation training, independent oversight committees, and policies that prioritize humanity over authority. She called for investment in marginalized communities, for education and opportunities that would break cycles of poverty and crime, and for a justice system that was truly just. Her words resonated deeply, drawing applause and cheers as she spoke with conviction and passion. Change isn't just possible, it's necessary, it's urgent, and it starts with each of us refusing to accept the status quo. As Erica finished her speech, the audience rose to their feet once more, their applause thunderous. She stood at the podium, overwhelmed by the response, her heart filled with both gratitude and determination. This was why she fought. This was the dawn of change. In the months that followed, Erica's work continued to grow. The reforms she advocated for were gaining traction, with several states adopting new policies inspired by her proposals. Community organizations began collaborating more closely with law enforcement, creating programs that emphasized trust and cooperation. The scholarship fund Erica had established for aspiring civil rights lawyers flourished, with dozens of young people pursuing careers in advocacy. But her journey wasn't without challenges. Erica faced opposition from those resistant to change, their criticism often veiled in coded language or outright hostility. She received hate mail and threats, reminders of the deep-rooted resistance to progress. Yet, she refused to be deterred. One evening, Erica attended a candlelight vigil organized by a community group in memory of victims of police violence. The event was held in a small park, where families and activists gathered to share stories, sing songs, and light candles. Erica was invited to speak, her presence a source of inspiration for many in attendance. As she stood before the crowd, holding a single lit candle, she felt the weight of their collective grief and hope. "This light," she said, her voice carrying through the night, "represents more than just remembrance. It represents resilience. It represents the fire within us to demand better, to be better, and to create a world where justice is not a privilege but a right." The crowd responded with applause and murmurs of agreement, their faces illuminated by the warm glow of their candles. Erica's heart swelled as she saw the strength in their eyes, the determination that mirrored her own. After the vigil, a young man approached her, his face familiar. He introduced himself as Jaden, the teenager whose mother had called Erica months earlier. "I just wanted to thank you in person," he said, his voice steady but emotional. "Because of you, I'm still here. And I'm going to make sure your fight wasn't in vain." Erica hugged him tightly, her tears flowing freely. Moments like these reminded her of the impact one voice could have, and of the power of collective action. As the years passed, Erica's influence grew. She published a memoir, Fighting for Light, a mother's battle for justice, which became a bestseller and inspired countless readers to join the fight for reform. Her story was taught in schools, her work cited in legislative debates, and her name synonymous with courage and change. Yet, through it all, Erica remained grounded. She continued to fight not for recognition, but for the future she had envisioned. A world where no parent would have to mourn their child due to systemic failure. She and Darren worked tirelessly, balancing their activism with moments of quiet reflection and joy, finding strength in their love and shared purpose. One day, as Erica walked through her neighborhood, she passed a playground filled with laughing children. She stopped to watch, her heart swelling with both sorrow and hope. A little boy ran up to her, his eyes wide with curiosity. "Are you Erica Brooks?" he asked. She knelt down, smiling gently. "Yes, I am. What's your name?" "I'm Elijah," he said proudly. "My mom says you're a hero." Erica's smile widened, tears brimming in her eyes. "Well, Elijah, heroes come in all shapes and sizes. And you're going to be one too." As she stood and continued on her way, Erica felt a sense of peace. Her fight was far from over, but she knew the seeds of change had been planted, their roots growing deeper with every story shared, every life touched, and every voice raised in unity. The dawn of change was here, and Erica Brooks was determined to see it flourish. As Erica continued walking home from the playground, her thoughts were heavy yet hopeful. Elijah's innocent words echoed in her mind, a reminder of the responsibility she bore. She wasn't just fighting for the present, she was laying a foundation for the future, for children like Elijah who deserved to grow up in a world free from the shadow of systemic injustice. At home, Darren greeted her with his usual warm smile, but he could tell from her expression that her mind was occupied. He set down his work and joined her on the couch, his arm draping over her shoulders. "You've got that look," he said gently. "What's on your mind?" Erica sighed, leaning into him. "That little boy at the park, Elijah. He called me a hero, and all I could think about was whether I've done enough, whether I've made enough of a difference." Darren kissed her temple, his voice steady. "You've done more than most people could ever dream of, Erica. But I know you. You'll always think there's more to do. And maybe there is, but you've already changed so many lives." His words offered some comfort, but they also reignited her determination. Erica knew she had to keep pushing forward, even as she found moments to rest and reflect. The movement she had helped ignite was growing, but sustaining it required constant vigilance and effort. A week later, Erica found herself in a room filled with lawmakers and community leaders, discussing the final stages of a groundbreaking bill that aimed to overhaul policing standards nationwide. The proposed legislation included mandatory de-escalation training, independent oversight committees for incidents of excessive force, and a federal database to track officers with records of misconduct. It was an ambitious plan, and not everyone in the room was on board. One senator, a middle-aged man with a sharp suit and a skeptical expression, leaned forward, his voice cutting through the discussion. "Ms. Brooks, I understand your passion, but don't you think these measures are excessive? Policing is already a dangerous job. Adding more bureaucracy will only make it harder for officers to do their work." Erica met his gaze, her expression calm but resolute. "Senator, with all due respect, policing isn't just about enforcing the law. It's about serving the community. These measures aren't about making the job harder. They're about making it better. For everyone." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "Imagine if you were in my position, holding your child in your heart instead of your arms. Imagine if it were your family torn apart by a system that failed to protect them. These reforms aren't excessive, they're necessary. Because without accountability, trust cannot exist. And without trust, there is no justice." The room fell silent, her words landing with undeniable weight. Slowly, heads began to nod, and murmurs of agreement filled the air. The senator, though reluctant, seemed to soften, his objections fading in the face of Erica's unwavering conviction. As the bill gained traction, Erica's work reached new heights. She traveled across the country, meeting with community leaders, attending town halls, and speaking at universities. Her message was consistent and clear. Change was possible, but it required collective effort and unyielding resolve. During one of her visits to a university, Erica was approached by a young woman named Tasha, who was studying law. Tasha shared how Erica's story had inspired her to pursue a career in civil rights, despite the challenges she knew she would face as a black woman in the field. "I used to think the system was too big, too broken to fix," Tasha said. "But you showed me that change doesn't happen all at once. It happens with every case, every voice, every fight. You made me believe I could be part of that." Erica felt a surge of pride and hope. Tasha's words reaffirmed the importance of her work, not just in fighting injustice, but in empowering others to carry the torch. At home, Erica and Darren began to focus on their personal lives as well. They decided to revisit the idea of building a family, knowing it wouldn't erase their loss, but would bring new joy and purpose into their lives. After months of discussion and reflection, they began the process of adoption, opening their hearts to a child in need of love and stability. The day they brought home a little girl named Amara was one of the most emotional moments of their lives. Amara, with her bright eyes and infectious laughter, filled their home with a light they hadn't felt in years. She became a symbol of renewal, a reminder that even after the darkest storms, life could begin again. Erica often shared stories with Amara about the work she was doing, teaching her about fairness, kindness, and the power of standing up for what was right. Amara, in turn, brought Erica a sense of balance, reminding her to find joy in the small moments even as she tackled monumental challenges. As the years went by, Erica's impact continued to grow. The reforms she had championed became benchmarks for other nations, her story inspiring global movements for justice and equality. She received numerous awards and accolades, but they were never her focus. Her true reward was seeing the lives she had touched, the community she had empowered, and the future she had helped shape. One evening, as Erica and Darren sat with Amara in their backyard, watching fireflies dance in the twilight, Amara looked up at her mother with wide eyes. "Mom, will you ever stop fighting?" Erica smiled, her heart full. "Not as long as there's work to be done, sweetheart. But one day, it'll be your turn." and I know you'll be ready." Amara nodded solemnly, her small hand resting on Erica's. "I'll make you proud." "You already do," Erica whispered, pulling her daughter close. As the stars emerged, Erica looked up at the vast expanse of the sky, feeling the sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The fight wasn't over, but she had built something lasting, a legacy of hope, resilience, and justice. And as she held her family close, she knew that no matter what lay ahead, the dawn of change had arrived. And it was here to stay.